Hey everyone. I know it's been over a year since I've made a video. Lots of weird stuff because of that that caused it. Mostly I had to get a new computer, which is a Chromebook, and nothing else I owned works with the Chromebook. So I'm testing this out to see if just using the built-in camera will work well enough for this. Um, Hopefully it will, and you can see what's going on. Um, this little test video is to show you how I take a book and take it apart in order to recover it to make a journal. And we'll go, if this works, there'll be more videos that'll show you the complete process. Everybody does it a little bit different, but I'm going to show you how I do it. So this is the book that I have. I have three this size. Popular Science, but I don't have the complete series, so they're not worth selling or reselling as is. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look for a book that is not glued to the spine. And if you can separate this one's a little hard because it's old, a little stiff, and you can put your finger in between the spine of the pages and the spine of the cover. It's not glued in. And that's what you want. Like the modern paperbacks, everything is glued right to the spine. Some of the hardbacks are as well. So, but you want to be able to make sure you can separate your pages from the backing. So that's your first step. Now, the other thing that I do is I make sure that these are very flexible. And then you will have their end paper, which is usually a thicker paper, and then the first page, which is usually nothing in particular. In this case, it's a photograph. No big deal. Actually, it's usually just this page and the first page are kind of glued together. This one is actually the second page too, and that's fine. We'll deal with that in a little bit. It'll be the same on the back side. Again, I'm kind of bending this over. You might have heard it cracking a little bit. Won't hurt it for our purposes. What you're going to need to do this with is either an X-Acto knife or one of these little doohickeys, which the blade pushes out, and you don't need it out too far because you don't want to cut through your backer if you can help it. Be very careful. New blades are very sharp, and that's what you want is a good sharp blade, so you're not working too hard, end up cutting through something, including possibly your own fingers. You don't want to do that. It's kind of painful and messy. Okay. You want to make sure that your first cut on this is the critical one. And I know you're not going to be able to see this very well, no matter what I do, because since that's the only camera I've got. Basically, I'm making sure that I'm not catching the spine, the cover spine, and I'm cutting as close in as I can to get started, just a little bit to get started. Then I can push it further with my finger. Remove your finger out of the way of the blade and keep going. Come here. You'll be able to follow that crease a bit. If you end up cutting these extra papers off, don't worry, it's not a big deal. But I kind of like to leave them if I can. This one being a lot older than most of the time. I'm using novels that I get from either Dollar Tree or garage sale or something for next to nothing. And I read the books first, and then if it's not one I want to keep, which if it's a novel I rarely do, I don't know of anybody else that wants it in particular, then I'll use it to make a journal. Okay. Once you see paper stuff, there we go. We got it, that part separated. Let me go ahead and get the back side separated. It's going to be the exact same process. And this only has one paper attached to it, besides the backing paper. Again, just press that open as best you can. This will be a little easier because we've got this whole piece loose. So I'm going to show you the back side of it as I cut this one. And I'm just following down the groove. You don't want to go too fast. You don't want to go cut through it if you can help it. Okay, there's our pages all taken out. I'll look through this and see if there's any pictures I might want to save for something in particular, since it does have photographs in it. I doubt it's going to have anything else in it that I might want. But I will reuse what I can. When I had someplace I could take paper for recycling, I would do that. I don't have that out here in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so I did cut a little bit. It did catch that, but it's not a big deal. Basically, our reason for saving that is for a little extra support. So I peel away these extra papers that are just kind of glued in place. I just want that thicker first page, and these peel off really easily. That's kind of an interesting picture, that volcano. I may keep that one. Never know. Okay, next step. I need my small scissor. I take a shorter pair of scissors. I do have longer ones. And I have the little tiny ones. And I like to trim off this excess hunk in here. Otherwise, it'll leave a bump. This being an old one, you'll see that these real older, this is a 1950s book. The older books that are well made will have this fabric mesh that was put in. Let's see, I don't know if that's really going to show. There we go. It's a fabric mesh that everything gets glued to. Let me see. Now, that's not going to show you because it's got paper on it. They put that fabric mesh on, then they put the paper on the pages themselves. But that helps hold their glue in place. This one is pretty flat. I'm going to go ahead and just peel off some of the paper and leave that side. You just don't want a lump. A lot of the novels, they're glued in with a very tacky, sticky, flexible glue. And that will really leave a big ridge. So you want to get rid of that if you can. Let me get the older books will leave you with a bit of dusty stuff. And it's good to get that out of the way. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to trim, because this is going to help reinforce our spine. So what I do is I just fold this over as if it's going to go all the way across. And then with my finger, I run up against this ridge right here and make a little crease. So then I can just trim that out, but shorter. I don't want it going that far because then it creates more lump and bump. And I'll keep this piece of paper to make a template for poking holes, for sewing in new pages. Okay, so you see I've got it, but it doesn't go all the way across. It just goes part way. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how good a picture this is giving you. And we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. Exactly the same thing. And we're, again, going to trim it maybe a 1/4 inch short. And again, I'm going to keep that piece of paper. Okay. Now we're ready to start doing a little bit of gluing. I like Mod Podge. It's thin enough to brush on where I need it. And I like the matte Mod Podge. It seems to be a little thicker, not as runny. You can just water down some Elmer's glue if that's what you want to try because you don't want to spend the money on Mod Podge. That's perfectly fine. Just as a clue, though, if you're just want to try this to see if you like doing it, my Dollar Tree actually has little tiny, I don't know, 4-ounce bottles, 2-ounce bottles. They're small, about this tall, about yay big around. And you can get those to try it out. My store carries tacky glue as well, the Aleene's tacky glue. I love this stuff. It's great for everything. It's probably showing backwards to you on there. But this is Aleene's tacky glue. This will glue nearly anything to anything, especially paper, wood, fabric, anything that absorbs absorbs the glue. So that works real good. So what I want to do now, I put my Mod Podge in a jar that has a bigger opening so that my, 1.5-inch brush will fit in there. I bought these are not expensive. I bought a package of 2 for $4 at Walmart. One I use for like watercolors and stuff. This one I use for glue. And when you're using it for anything, wet it first and then squeeze out all of your water so that you just have a damp brush. What that does is it keeps your brush from absorbing everything all the way up, and it's much easier to clean it all out. So you don't end up with, only this much of your brush that's usable because now the rest is a solid mass that doesn't move. This is very flexible. I've got an upper portion up here that's probably got glue in it. But, for what I'm doing with this is fine. So there's just a little tip on saving your brushes to last longer. So what I'm going to do is put a thin coat. Does not have to be a thick one. But, a nice coat of glue in the spine area only, and you can get up underneath there. Okay. And I usually do what's going to be the back. Doesn't really matter at this point because I'm going to cover it with something else anyway. This is basically going to be for extra support. Since it did make splits in it, I don't know. Yeah, you can see that. Definitely want to cover over this with something else, a decorative paper or a fabric or something. So push that down, make sure it's down good and tight. Okay, and then we're going to go over it again. Make sure it's not too soppy wet with your paste. And you're going to go down again. One thing you want to make sure, hopefully you can see this, you want to be, what forms that ditch on the outside for the bending, you want to make sure that's there. So you don't want a gap here. You want it in that ditch. Otherwise, your book will not bend properly and it won't look nice. And I always keep a rag to wipe my fingers on or wipe anything else off. Not that I really need to on this one, but just to clean up any messes I get. Okay. Now, normally I'll do a bunch of them and let them all dry. By the time I'm ready for them, they're dry. But actually for this next step, you can go ahead and start. For this one, I'm going to do a Halloween themed journal, scrapbook kind of thing. So I bought this fabric I got this at Walmart. That's pretty much my only choice unless I'm cutting up old sheets or something that I found at the thrift store. Walmart's our only game in town here. And actually, unless I drive over an hour away to Abilene, Texas, there's no other option. So, got my fabric. I don't iron it. It's not necessary for what we're doing. And you take your book. I just lay the fabric down first. Um, I don't know why. I just always do. More glue. And you're going to do just the spine. And you want to make sure you get down in those ditches. And you don't want to take too long. You don't want this to dry because you're going to glue your fabric on. You don't want the glue extra or the Mod Podge extra heavy because it'll come through the fabric and it'll make marks on the fabric. If you do it thin enough to stick it and stick it well, but you don't oversaturate the fabric, it won't come through the fabric. And then you won't have to coat it if you don't want to. If it does come through, you can put a coat or two of Mod Podge on top and it'll come back out. Now, you want to leave at least ½ an inch for folding up. Since I've got a selvage over there, this should be fine. And just push it down to stick it on. And then you're going to flip the whole thing over because you've got to work from the back side. Because you not only want it good and tight to the spine, you've got to use your fingernails or edge of your scissors carefully or something to push down into that ditch. I don't know how well you're seeing that ditch right there where the boards fold. So your book will be down into there. It'll fold properly. And you got to do that on both sides. Make sure it's tight down into those ditches on both sides. That's the critical area where you may get a little bit of glue seepage. But it's not a big deal there. You don't want it on the main part of your book if you can help it, unless you want to cut it with Mod Podge anyway for a shinier finish or something waterproof, sort of. Water resistant. Okay. Now I pull this back to where because it's not totally dry yet, I pull it back just to where it's really sticking good. And then I start Mod Podging the cover. One side at a time. You don't want to try and do too much at one time because it'll dry and then you won't get a good adhesion. Make sure you get your edges good. You want the whole thing good, but you don't want your glue piling up, but you want all your edges glued. And I usually go around the sides like that. Okay, so you got a good amount of coverage, fairly even. If it's thin enough, it's going to be even. I got a little too much there. I may have to cut this one, but that's okay. Do it if we have to. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Right here, a little bit of glue is seeping through. It may kind of disappear. It may not. And on this one, it may or may not make any difference. We'll see, because this one's going to be kind of it's a Halloween or Gothic themed journal. I'm going to do some black pages and stuff in it. And I've got some fun black and white lace that might work fun in it. Anyway, we're doing the same exact thing on the back side.